Hello, I'm Rachel, and I want to take you back to a sunny Sunday that started like any other but turned into a day that changed everything for me. It was one of those days you don't expect to stand out, but it ends up staying with you forever. A wave of mixed emotions washed over me when I arrived at my brother James's house. I was excited to see everyone, but there was also a bit of nervousness. It had been a while since the whole family had gathered, and I was eager to catch up. I also had some exciting news to share. I had just landed a new job as a manager at a major marketing firm, something I had worked hard for. My car, an old black 1998 sedan, was loaded with bags of chips and homemade salsa. Sure, it wasn't much, especially compared to the other cars in the driveway, but it was mine, and I had paid for it. It got me where I needed to go, and that's what mattered. As soon as I got out of the car, James was there to greet me with a smile on his face. "Hey Jules, we were starting to think you stood us up," he joked. I laughed, handing him the snacks. Never, the traffic was terrible, but I made it. We walked towards the backyard, and the smell of burgers on the grill hit me immediately. I saw Mary, James's wife, standing by the patio. She looked like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine, dressed in the perfect summer dress and oversized designer sunglasses. She always knew how to draw attention, and today was no different. My parents were at the grill greeting everyone while flipping the burgers, while my younger brothers Michael and I were busy setting up some outdoor games. Everything seemed perfect, just like family gatherings used to be. But of course, Mary had to make her entrance. "Finally, the guest of honor has arrived," Mary shouted with her loud voice, the kind that ensured everyone, and I mean everyone, even the neighbors, could hear her. As she said this, her eyes quickly darted towards my old blue car parked next to her new and shiny SUV. "You couldn't park that relic around the corner. Jules is ruining my view." Some of my cousins laughed under their breath, and I tried to downplay it with a hearty laugh. "Well, it gets me from point A to point B," I replied, trying not to let it get to me. But Mary wasn't finished. She sighed dramatically and took a long sip of her cocktail. "Oh darling, you really should treat yourself to something nicer. Now you are a manager, you shouldn't behave like that." I started to respond, wanting to share my exciting news about the new job, but before I could say a word, Mary had already turned around, gathering a group of people for a game, completely ignoring me. I stood there for a moment, her words still hurt me. It wasn't just about the car, it was the way she said it, as a reminder of that no matter what he achieved, it would never be enough in their eyes. James looked at me from across the yard and shrugged an apology, signaling me not to let it get to me. I tried to smile back at him, but it was hard to shake off the feeling of being belittled. The afternoon went by like most barbecues, games, socializing, and catching up with family. I tried to enjoy myself, but Mary's comment kept swirling in my mind. It wasn't the first time she had made me feel small, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. It wasn't really about the car, it was about the unspoken competition that always seemed to exist between us, reminding me of my place in her world. When we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily. Everyone was sharing updates about their lives, from new jobs to family news. When it was my turn, I shared the big news about my new job and family. They congratulated me and asked me some questions about the position, but even when the spotlight was on me for a moment, Mary managed to take it back. Talking about my role in a similar company, making it seem like my achievement was nothing. "Compared to yours, I didn't know I had something even bigger reserved, something that would change everything, but I wasn't going to let it ruin it." Still moment while we all sat around the table enjoying the food, Mary leaned in and said with a teasing smile, "So, Rachel, this new job should be a big step forward compared to the previous one, huh?" He let out a small chuckle before adding, "Hopefully, they're paying you enough to upgrade that car soon." He gave a little elbow nudge. James, clearly finding his comment amusing, was about to respond. But before I could say a word, my mother intervened. "We are all very proud of Rachel, she has worked hard for this," he said with a warm smile, his words full of pride. The rest of the meal continued with laughter and family stories, but I couldn't shake off the tension that was boiling beneath the surface. At a slow burn just beneath the surface, the comment from Mary, though she said it with a smile, had left a wound. She always seemed to know how to mock me, and I could feel it gnawing at me all night long. As the sun began to set, people started to say their goodbyes. I helped clean up, all the while thinking about Mary's arrogance and trying to shake off the feeling of unease I had about starting my new job on Thursday. That Thursday morning, I was very nervous as I walked toward the sleek glass building of my new office. The first days are always stressful, but this was on another level. I wasn't just starting a new job. I was taking on a leadership position at one of the top marketing companies in the city. The pressure was enormous, and my stomach was churning with a mix of excitement and anxiety. When I entered, the receptionist greeted me with a friendly smile. "Good morning, Rachel is waiting upstairs." I took a deep breath as I walked towards it, trying to calm my nerves when the elevator doors opened. They opened up to me, received me with applause. My new team was there, clapping. Welcoming me with big smiles was a moment that felt surreal and eased some of the nerves that had been building up. The director, Mr. David, stepped forward and shook my hand firmly. We all officially welcomed Rachel as our new project director. The room was filled with excitement, and I felt a wave of pride. But then my eyes landed on Mary. She was clapping along with everyone else, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her applause was slow and hesitant, and I could see the surprise on her face. Of course, I hadn't known until that moment that I would be her new boss. After the introductions, Mary approached me with a tense and forced smile. "Let's catch up after this," Rachel said, trying to sound cheerful. But there was a hint of surprise in her voice. "Sure, let's do it," I replied, keeping my voice calm and serene. Although on the inside my emotions were swirling, I couldn't help but feel a bit of satisfaction seeing Mary in this position. After her comments at the barbecue, once the meeting was over and people returned to their desks, Mary walked over to me, her usual confidence wavering. "Rachel, about the barbecue. I hope there are no hard feelings." Her voice was much softer than usual. It had nothing to do with the bold and conceited Mary I was used to. I looked at her with a professional expression. "Mary, let's focus on work. Personal matters should stay outside these walls," I replied, giving her a polite but distant smile. "Of course." "Rachel, you're right," she nodded. Mary, although she looked away, unable to completely hide the unease she felt. In the following days I immersed myself in my new role, spending hours reviewing project files and performance reports, trying to catch up as quickly as possible. One thing became clear: Mary's work required special attention. There were inconsistencies in the timelines of her projects and in the budget allocations that didn't quite add up. I knew I had to address it sooner rather than later. During one of our one-on-one meetings, I decided to bring it up directly. "Mary, I've noticed some discrepancies in Smith's account. Can you explain the process?" I asked, maintaining a calm and professional tone. Mary gave a clearly surprised, "She surely responded," but I could see the unease in her eyes. An interesting journey lay ahead, managing both professional challenges and the personal dynamics at play. But I was ready for it. This was my moment to prove my worth, and I was not willing to let anything or anyone, including Mary, stand in my way. Mary let out a nervous laugh, fiddling with her pen. It's probably just a few small oversights, you know how things are with tight deadlines," she said, trying to downplay the matter. I looked at her calmly but firmly. "Minor or not, precision is important. We cannot afford any mistakes. Especially with such important clients. Let's go over this together." According to my tone, there was little room for excuses, and Mary nodded quickly. "Yes, I will look for the details now," he said with his fingers trembling slightly as he typed on the keyboard. As he reviewed the files, it became evident that Mary had been taking shortcuts. Her work barely met the minimum standard, and the more we reviewed, the more gaps we found. "Let's make sure that the oversights are addressed immediately." Her face tensed, but she nodded. "I understand. Rachel, I will make sure to clarify things." "Thank you for pointing them out," she said with a mix of gratitude and discomfort in her voice. I nodded firmly. "Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Our clients and our team count on us to be diligent." When Mary left my office, I could see that she was finally starting to feel the weight of the situation. For me, it was about ensuring that our work lived up to the circumstances, but deep down, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. In a way, it felt like justice was being served, and I knew that Mary had a lot to prove in the future. The following Thursday, what was at stake was even more important, not just for me but also for Mary. It was her opportunity to show what she could do. She walked into the office, clutching her enormous designer handbag in a stack of files. Her heels echoed on the polished floor as she made her way to my office. "Do you have a minute?" I shouted, gesturing for her to come in. The tone was serious but calm as he clearly responded, smoothing out the project. Henderson said, presenting the details of the project in front of her. "It's not a huge project, but it's important. This is your chance to Show what you are capable of. The eyes of Mary they opened slightly, a mix of nervousness and excitement was drawn on their face. Seriously, I want to say thank you. Rachel, I won't let you down. I nodded, watching her closely. I will guide you through the process, but I want to see what you can do when you're in charge of the project. The following days were intense. I closely followed their progress and I registered regularly. We had frequent meetings and made sure of the strategy. I noticed that she had difficulties. Mary, during our last review, you mentioned outsourcing part of the graphic work. Have you adequately researched the provider? I asked, trying to get an answer. Clara, oh yes, they are fine, Mary replied quickly, clearly trying to brush off the question. I mean, they should be fine. I raised an eyebrow, not satisfied with his response. It's important that they are more than just okay. You can show me the research process you used. Mary paused, realizing that she hadn't done the work correctly. Her confidence wavered, and I could see that stress was affecting her. It was no longer just about doing the bare minimum, it was about stepping up and showing that she could handle the responsibility. As the project progressed, the pressure to meet the high standards we needed increased. It wasn't easy, but I could see that Mary was still learning. Mistakes were made, but she corrected them faster each time. Watching her work under pressure made me realize that, although she had a long way to go, she was starting to take the job more seriously. By the end of the project, I could see a change in Mary. She was not the same. A confident and carefree person who had previously been humbled by experience, and although there was still room for improvement, I knew I was on the right path. I moved forward knowing that any mistake I made now would be officially recorded. Mary rummaged through her usual trust in goats, which faded away. I will give you that information at the end of the day, stammering supplementarily. I didn't bring the paperwork with me. Right now, the days turned into weeks and the project deadline was approaching. In a team meeting, it was finally Mary's turn to present her progress. The room was full and the air was thick with anticipation. Mary was standing at the front holding her report, but her usual composure had vanished. She seemed restless, her confidence was nowhere to be seen. Well, let's see, she began, as she glanced through her notes for the marketing strategy. We are planning. Her words faded, and her sentences stumbled. The report lacked the depth and clarity that was expected, and I could feel the tension rising in the room. Mr. David, who was sitting in the corner, slightly raised his eyebrows and nodded, indicating his concern. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Mary, I interrupted. Could you clarify? How the budget was allocated seems to show some discrepancies between your report and the original estimates. Her face turned red as she shifted uncomfortably. Well, I had to make some last-minute changes, and the costs, well, got out of hand. I see, I said, maintaining my calm but firm tone. It is crucial that we stick to the planned budget. Especially when dealing with new clients, we need to ensure that this does not happen again. I looked around and could see the concern on the faces of my team members. It was important that everyone learned from this, not just Mary. When the meeting ended, the team left, and murmurs about the state of the project filled the room. Mary stayed behind, her defeat was evident. Her usual confidence had crumbled, and I could see the weight of the situation settling upon her. Rachel said in a low voice as she approached me, I tried to handle it, but I don't know what went wrong. I looked at the tone was firm but not harsh. Managing projects is about supervision and adaptability. Mary, we need to discuss. How can we solve this? Mary nodded, agreeing to meet with me later to address the issues. I could see that she was embarrassed, but this was more than just her failure. It was about maintaining a high standard for the entire team, documenting everything carefully, noting the problems in their work. Now it was clear to everyone that their poor management had caused problems, but they were not happy with their struggle. It was not about revenge but about protecting the company and our clients. The professional standards were fundamental the day after that difficult meeting. The office was unusually quiet as I made my way to my desk. I could hear whispers behind me, people talking about what had happened. Mary was pacing back and forth near the water cooler and intercepted me before I could sit down. This was a trap. She didn't accuse me with her voice full of tension and confusion. From the beginning, you have been trying to hurt me. I stood my ground and looked her in the eyes. I gave you a chance, Mary, I said calmly. The outcome was in your hands, not mine. Mary seemed furious, she could barely contain her anger. I understood that she was upset, but her accusation was not fair. They had been given every opportunity to succeed, and the decisions they made were theirs. I wasn't there to sabotage, I was there to ensure that the work was done well. He paused for a moment, his face softened when the reality of the situation became clear. I didn't want things to be this way, he murmured in a calmer voice. Now I understand, I replied. But this is more than just a single project, it's about learning from mistakes and improving. We cannot allow this to happen again. Mary finally nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She had to take responsibility for her actions and hoped this would be a turning point for her. It wasn't about bringing her down, it was about making sure she grew from the experience. We all had to be accountable, and I knew that if this lesson was taken seriously, it could change things. I remained calm and composed even when Mary's tone became more emotional. But you just saw me fail, she said with a trembling voice from desperation. You could have helped more, you could have guided me. Helping is one thing, I replied. But doing your job for you is another matter, we all have to meet the company's standards. Unfortunately, your work did not meet those expectations. He mocked, raising his hands in a sign of frustration. So that's it, you're just going to watch me fall. It's not about seeing you fail. Mary documented everyone's performance. It's my job and it's not personal, I said, trying to stay firm yet professional. Later that afternoon, Mr. David called both of us to his office. The tension in the air was thick as Mary and I sat in front of him. He presented the documents he had prepared regarding poorly managed budgets, unvetted suppliers, and scheduling issues after reviewing the evidence and considering. The observations of Rachel have led us to decide that the best thing for the company is to part ways with you, Mary, Mr. David said firmly. Mary's face paled and the fire in her eyes faded as the reality of the decision settled in. I understand, she whispered in a barely audible voice. The news of Mary's dismissal spread quickly, and at the next family gathering, the atmosphere felt a bit strange. My brother James approached me while I was pouring myself a coffee. I know it has been tough. Jules, are you okay? Clara asked with concern. I did what I had to do. James, it wasn't about revenge, it was about integrity, I said, feeling the weight of the situation. He nodded and gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. I know, sister, and I think deep down everyone else knows it too. Our always understanding parents didn't mention Mary's absence, instead, they focused on keeping the family together, making the night feel lighter as it went on. The laughter and conversations slowly helped ease the tension that had been there before. Later, as I drove home, the familiar hum of my old car gave me time to reflect while watching the streetlights blur by. I thought about everything that had happened. My job required difficult decisions that not only affected me but also those around me. While I hadn't intended to hurt Mary, I knew that my role was to defend. Professional standards meant making tough decisions even when they involved family. Although the weight of those decisions felt heavy, I continued driving, confident that I had done my job with fairness and integrity. The road ahead felt clearer, guided by the principles I believed in the most. And that concludes our story. What do you think? Rachel did the right thing in how she handled the situation with Mary. She should have been more understanding, or did she do the right thing by sticking to her professional duties? Let us know your opinion in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe to receive more stories like this.